Taming the Wild Above, generated by StoryWave.ai.
Chapter 1: The Dawn of Discovery. In the burgeoning heart of London's scientific community, a man of unassuming appearance yet fierce intellect was poised at the precipice of a revelation that would forever alter humanity's relationship with the invisible forces of nature. Michael Faraday, at the seasoned age of 49, stood amidst the cluttered expanse of the Royal Institution's laboratory, his green eyes reflecting the glow of countless experiments, his hands marked by the toils of inquiry. "Nature has endless secrets, and I intend to coax them into the light," Faraday murmured to himself, his British accent lending an air of resolve to his softly spoken words. His brown hair, flecked with the onset of gray, fell in disarray, barely contained by the occasional absent-minded stroke of his hand. A beard, more practical than fashionable, framed his contemplative visage, his demeanor ever curious, as he hunched over a dizzying array of wires and magnets. The room, steeped in the musk of heated metal and the tang of chemical concoctions, was a sanctuary to Faraday. Shelves brimming with leather-bound journals whispered tales of scientific conquests, while the workbench was littered with the tools of his trade: coils, galvanic cells, and iron filings. Each instrument was a testament to Faraday's singular obsession to unravel the complex dance between magnetism and electricity. Faraday's idle moments were few, his mind ceaselessly engaged with the puzzle that lay before him. The air was laden with the expectancy of discovery, each spark from his experiments a potential herald of understanding. Yet the truth remained veiled, the relationship between magnetic fields and electric currents a tapestry of elusive threads. His assistant, a diligent young man whose admiration for Faraday was eclipsed only by his fascination with the experiments, watched in silence. "Mr. Faraday, will we breach the barrier today?" he asked, a note of excitement betraying his composed exterior. "The answers we seek are not given lightly," Faraday replied, adjusting the knobs on his apparatus with deliberate care. "Nature guards her secrets with a miser's grip, but mark my words, we shall wrest them from her grasp." The laboratory, a cathedral of ingenuity, bore witness to Faraday's relentless pursuit. Day bled into night as he tested hypothesis after hypothesis, the electric currents and magnetic fields dancing to a tune only he could hear. The sparks that flew from his equipment were like the brushstrokes of an artist, painting a picture of the forces that coursed unseen through the world around them. As Faraday peered into the heart of his latest contrivance, a coil encircling a magnet, the air seemed to hum with potential. "Ah, the symmetry of it," he mused, "the elegance. It is as if electricity and magnetism are two sides of the same coin." A breakthrough, when it came, was not with a thunderous proclamation, but with a subtle shift, a piece of the puzzle sliding into place. Observing the deflection of a compass needle when it was placed near his electrified wire, Faraday's eyes widened. "Behold," he whispered, his voice barely rising above the crackle of energy. "The invisible made visible." The young assistant leaned in, his breath held in anticipation. "Mr. Faraday, do you mean to say—" "Yes," Faraday cut in, his gaze never leaving the trembling needle. "We are witnessing the birth of a new understanding. The magnetic field, it responds to the electric current. They are bound together, inseparable." The significance of the moment was not lost on either of them. Faraday had peeled back a corner of nature's grand tapestry, revealing a glimpse of the intricate workings beneath. The questions that plagued him, the how and why of magnetism's influence on electricity, remained, but now he held the first threads in his hands, ready to unravel the mystery. As dawn crept through the windows of the laboratory, spilling light over the scene of triumph, Faraday stood resolute. The path ahead was fraught with challenge, the forces of nature a formidable adversary. Yet, within the walls of the Royal Institution, guided by a muse that whispered of hidden energies and unseen connections, Michael Faraday had set the stage for a revolution. For in his hands lay the nascent power to tame the wild above, to harness the electromagnetic spectrum and bind the world together in a web of communication. This was but the dawn of discovery, and the day was yet young. Chapter 2: Harnessing the Invisible. In the vibrant heart of scientific exploration, the Royal Institution's laboratory thrummed with anticipation. Michael Faraday, the esteemed man of science, stood before a congregation of his peers, a collection of the era's most brilliant minds. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and varnish, the hushed murmur of the crowd barely containing their skepticism. Michael's invention, a curious assembly of wires and magnets, lay at the center of the room, an enigma to the uninitiated. Charles, a fellow researcher whose lean frame and sharp features often gave him an air of austerity, approached the setup with a furrowed brow. Michael, you claim to have made a discovery that could alter the course of our understanding. Pray, elucidate your findings before this esteemed body, he challenged, his voice tinged with a skepticism that mirrored the room's sentiment. Michael's response was measured, his voice a steady cadence of confidence. Gentlemen, what lies before you is not mere conjecture, but the embodiment of his most profound secret electromagnetic rotation. He gestured toward the device. Observe as I demonstrate the tangible dance of magnetism and electricity. With the room's attention ensnared, Michael initiated his demonstration. The contraption, composed of a free-hanging wire dipped into a pool of mercury with a magnet positioned at its center, came to life. With a flick of the switch, an electric current coursed through the wire, and to the astonishment of all present, it began to rotate around the magnet. A murmur cascaded through the onlookers, a blend of awe and incredulity. Astonishing, breathed a voice from the back, the word resonating like a bell in the chamber of disbelief. Michael, his gaze fixed on the rotating wire, addressed the assembly with a fervor born of his conviction. What you witness is the principle that shall drive forward our mastery over nature's forces. The principle behind the electric motor. Charles, his skepticism waning, leaned closer, his eyes tracing the motion of the wire. But how can this be? The wire turns as if bewitched, he uttered, his scientific curiosity gnawing at his initial doubt. It is no sorcery but science, Michael retorted, his demeanor unflinching. The magnetic field interacts with the electric current, creating a force that sets the wire in motion. This is but the first step in harnessing the invisible energy that surrounds us. The demonstration concluded, and the assembly was left to ponder the implications of Faraday's discovery. Whispers flitted through the air, a mixture of wonder and wariness, as the potential of electromagnetic rotation began to dawn on the once doubtful spectators. In the days that followed, Michael's results rippled across Europe, igniting a fervor of interest among scientific circles and beyond. The publication of his findings in the institution's journal was met with an enthusiasm that bordered on zeal, as the implications of electric motor technology began to take shape in the minds of inventors and industrialists alike. Yet, not all were eager to embrace the new horizon. Detractors, bound by tradition and the comfort of established theories, voiced their resistance. Nature does not yield her secrets so readily, they argued, their obstinance a wall against the tide of progress. Michael, undeterred by the currents of controversy, remained steadfast in his pursuit. The laboratory, once a sanctuary of solitude, now buzzed with the energy of collaboration and discourse. Each experiment was a step closer to taming the wild forces that had captivated his imagination since youth. As he labored over the intricacies of his invention, the electric motor, Michael found himself at the vanguard of an era defined by the conquest of the unseen. The electromagnetic forces, once enigmatic specters, were steadily yielding to the ingenuity of human endeavor. The chapter of doubt was closing, and a new narrative was being penned, a narrative where humanity, armed with knowledge and the indomitable spirit of curiosity, harnessed the invisible, and in doing so, drew back the veil on a world teeming with possibility. This was the essence of the man versus nature struggle, not a battle for dominion, but a quest for harmony with the profound energies that animate the universe. Chapter 3. The Race for the Ether. The corridors of the Royal Institution hummed with a fervor unmatched by any scientific endeavor of the age. Michael Faraday, ensconced in his laboratory, a veritable alchemist's den of coils, wires, and arcane instruments, was on the cusp of yet another monumental breakthrough. The air was electric, with the scent of hot wax and resin, the walls lined with shelves groaning under the weight of scientific tomes and treatises. It's not merely about understanding the forces at play, but harnessing them, Michael insisted, his hands deftly adjusting the knobs of an intricate device designed to manipulate the frequencies of electromagnetic waves. The ether is a vast ocean, and we've barely wet our toes in its waters. Across the channel, in the rival laboratories of Europe, there stirred an equal measure of ambition. Talented men of science, driven by the twin fires of national pride and personal glory, were eager to eclipse the achievements of their British counterpart. Among them was the formidable André-Marie Ampère, a French physicist with a sharp mind and sharper ambitions. In his Parisian laboratory, Ampère, a man of medium build with an intense gaze that seemed to penetrate the very secrets of the universe, peered over his own array of devices. Faraday may have sparked this race, he spoke in his crisp Parisian accent to his young apprentice, but it is we who shall claim the laurels. Back in London, Michael's assistant, a steadfast young man named Thomas, observed as Michael coaxed the invisible waves into submission. "Mr. Faraday, with respect, the French are nipping at our heels. Ampère has been making strides that parallel your own." Michael glanced at Thomas, his green eyes alight with an indefatigable spirit. "Let them come," he said with a wry smile. "It is not a question of who, but of how. The knowledge we seek will serve all of humanity, not just the one who grasps it first." As he spoke, Michael connected a wire to a small, primitive receiver, a contraption that seemed to quiver with potential. He adjusted the frequency of the transmitter, a series of sparks jumping along the wire, the very air around them charged with tension. Suddenly, the room was filled with a faint sound, a crackling that grew steadier as Michael fine-tuned the apparatus. Thomas leaned in, his ears straining to decipher the noise. "Is that music?" he asked in disbelief. Michael nodded, his eyes never leaving the device. Sound, transmitted through the ether, carried by the waves of electromagnetic force. This, Thomas, is the infancy of what will one day be known as the radio. The implications of such a discovery sent ripples through the scientific community. In academic circles, salons, and coffee houses, the news of Faraday's latest experiment was on everyone's lips. The prospect of transmitting sound across vast distances without the need for wires was both thrilling and unsettling. And yet, Michael was not without his detractors. In the hallowed halls of academia, some scoffed at the notion. "It's a parlor trick," one distinguished professor declared dismissively. "The ether is no medium for such fantasies." Undaunted by the criticism, Michael forged ahead, his every moment consumed by the endeavor to untangle the mysteries of the invisible waves. With each experiment, he peeled back the layers of the unknown, his resolve an unbreakable shield against the slings and arrows of doubt. The race for the ether had become more than a mere competition. It was a quest for mastery over nature's most elusive domain. Michael, along with his rivals, stood at the forefront of an invisible battlefield, each discovery a volley fired in the name of progress. For Michael Faraday, the challenge was a siren call to his intrinsic love of nature's hidden forces. His lab, an epicenter of innovation, was the stage upon which the drama of discovery played out, a drama that would echo through the ages, shaping the future of global communication. As the chapter drew to a close, the air was thick with the promise of further revelations. The ethereal realm of electromagnetic waves was slowly yielding its secrets to those bold enough to chase them. And in this intrepid pursuit, the very fabric of society was being woven anew. Faraday's vision, once a flicker of genius in the dark expanse of ignorance, was now a beacon, guiding humanity toward a destiny intertwined with the untamed forces that swirled above them in the boundless ether. Chapter 4. Echoes through the ether. Within the revered walls of the Royal Institution, the atmosphere was one of frenetic anticipation. Michael, his visage gaunt from relentless toil and the grip of malady, stood before his most transformative creation yet. A coil of wire, an iron ring, and a galvanometer comprised the seemingly innocuous assembly that would soon transmute the very essence of energy. Thomas, ever the faithful assistant, cast a concerned glance at Michael's pallor, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his mentor's features. "Michael, you've been laboring without respite. Perhaps a moment of repose is in order?" Michael shook his head, a wisp of a smile crossing his lips. "Rest is a luxury that the ether does not afford us, my boy," he rasped, the timbre of his voice revealing the toll of his exertions. "We are on the verge of something grand, something that shall echo through the ages." The hushed assembly of onlookers, a medley of distinguished men of science and ardent aficionados of Michael's work, leaned in as he commenced the demonstration. With a decisive motion, he connected the wire to a battery, sending a surge of electric current through the coil. As the current flowed, a quiver ran through the galvanometer's needle, an unequivocal dance that spoke of invisible forces at play. A collective gasp filled the room, the very air vibrating with the magnitude of the moment. "Behold, the birth of electromagnetic induction," Michael declared, his voice steady despite the weariness that clung to him like a shadow. "This humble needle's movement is the harbinger of a new epoch in energy generation." A murmur of awe rippled through the assembly, the implications of the discovery sparking a fire in the minds of those present. "But how does the current induce such an effect?" asked a skeptical voice, its owner a rival scientist whose own endeavors paled in comparison to Michael's feats. "It is quite elementary," Michael responded, his demeanor patient. "When the electric current changes in the coil, it creates a magnetic field that, in turn, induces a current in the neighboring wire. It is a dance of energies, one giving rise to the other." The rival, a man named John, tall and with a hawkish countenance, narrowed his eyes, the gears of his mind turning. "And you believe this can be harnessed to generate power?" Michael nodded, a flicker of energy coursing through him, rekindling the flame that illness had sought to extinguish. "Indeed, it is not merely belief, but certainty. This principle shall lead us to the creation of the first generator, transforming mechanical energy into electrical." The room was alive with discourse, the revelation igniting a torrent of conversation and debate. The very concept of a generator, a machine that could convert the mechanical spinning of wheels and gears into a stream of electricity, was a marvel that promised to reshape the world. Yet, as the crowd dispersed, the toll on Michael was evident. Thomas lingered, his brow furrowed in concern. "Michael, your health mustn't be forfeited for the pursuit of discovery. You've already given so much." Michael, his frame bent but unbroken, cast a gaze through the window, where the stars twinkled like distant mysteries, yet unsolved. "Thomas, the work we do, it is more than a mere calling. It is a covenant with the future. What we lay down today shall be the foundations upon which tomorrow is built." The air grew still, the echoes of the day's triumphs mingling with the somber realization of Michael's sacrifice. The race against time and the ether was relentless, but Michael's spirit, though encased in a faltering vessel, was as indomitable as the forces he sought to harness. As night embraced the institution, the flicker of candlelight cast long shadows across the laboratory. The silhouette of Michael, bent over his notes, was a testament to the unyielding quest for knowledge, a quest that would bear fruit in the form of the generator, a beacon of progress in the uncharted wilderness of science. In the silent communion between man and nature, the whispers of the ether carried the promise of a dawn, yet to break a dawn, that would be illuminated by the ingenuity and tenacity of those who dared to dream of taming the wild above. Chapter 5. The First Spark. In the hallowed halls of Cambridge, a young and eager James Clerk Maxwell pored over the extensive body of work left by the esteemed Michael. With every page of Michael's intricate notes, James's mind spun with the possibilities, the untapped potential of electromagnetism sprawling before him like a vast, untouched continent. A fellow academic, an astute man with a penchant for precision named Peter, leaned over James's shoulder, observing the wild array of formulas and sketches that peppered the workspace. "Do you truly believe there is more to be discovered within Faraday's tangle of insights?" Peter inquired, doubt lining his features as he struggled to follow James's train of thought. James looked up, his eyes alight with the fire of conviction. "More than believe, I am certain of it," he affirmed, his Scottish brogue lending an earnest cadence to his words. "Faraday has laid the groundwork. It falls upon us to erect the edifice upon it. The electromagnetic field, he sensed its waves, its flux. Now we must prove their existence, discern their laws." The challenge was Herculean. The technology of their day seemed a crude hammer where a scalpel was needed. Yet it was in this crucible of limitation that James's brilliance shone brightest. He set to work, his hand dancing across the parchment as he formulated the mathematical expressions that would come to be known as Maxwell's equations. Your equations are elegant, James, but they are a castle built on air if we cannot demonstrate their truth, Peter pressed, his skepticism a constant companion to James's optimism. James nodded, undeterred. And yet it is upon the currents of air that we must set our sights. If my calculations hold, then electromagnetic waves are as real as the very air we breathe. They traverse the ether, unseen but omnipresent. The ensuing months saw James immersed in the labor of translating his theories into tangible experiment. Each day was a step closer to unveiling the truth of the electromagnetic spectrum, a truth that would redefine humanity's interaction with the natural world. In his quest, James was joined by a cadre of enthusiastic supporters, young minds drawn to the luminescence of his ideas. Among them was a sharp-witted student named Elizabeth, her intellect rivaling that of her male peers, her ambition undimmed by the constraints of her time. Mr. Maxwell, your theories suggest a symphony of waves of varying lengths, of differing frequencies, Elizabeth commented during one of their intense discussions. Could we not, then, devise an instrument to detect these waves, to prove their existence beyond doubt? James regarded Elizabeth with a respect born of intellectual kinship. Indeed, Miss Elizabeth, your insight cuts to the heart of the matter. The instrument you speak of would need to be exquisitely sensitive, a detector that could respond to the faintest whisper of the ether. The conception of such a device was a task that would span years, a testament to the painstaking march of progress. In the interim, James's equations began to circulate, stirring the imaginations of scientists across the continent. The vision of an interconnected world, bound by invisible waves of communication, was taking form. Yet, even as James's health waned, the specter of his mortality casting a shadow over his work, he pressed on. The first spark, the initial conception of the radio, was a beacon that would guide future generations toward a revolution in global connectivity. The chapter closed with James's theories poised like a bow drawn back, ready to release an arrow that would pierce the heart of the unknown. The stage was set, and though James would not live to see the full flowering of his work, his legacy was a torch passed to the hands of others who would carry it into the dawning age of electronic communication. The promise of the radio, a device that would transmit voices and music through the ether, was a dream that transcended the limitations of their present technology. In the grand tapestry of man's struggle with nature, James Clerk Maxwell had woven a golden thread, his equations a map to the treasures that lay hidden in the electromagnetic spectrum, a spectrum that hummed with the echoes of a future waiting to be born. An engineer by the name of Oliver, whose ingenuity was matched only by his vision, took the floor next. Faraday's legacy is a conduit through which our very essence can be shared, he posited, his hands gesturing to emphasize his conviction. Imagine a world where knowledge is unshackled by geography, where the collective wisdom of humanity is but a moment away. The assembly buzzed with the potential of such a world, the air crackling with the electricity of possibility. Yet for every vision of utopia, there was a whisper of dystopia, a reminder that with great power came great responsibility. As the conference drew to a close, the streets outside teemed with life, the citizens of London unknowing participants in a historical pivot. The clamor of carriages and the clamoring voices of vendors and passers-by were the overture to a symphony of interconnected existence. In the years that followed, the world witnessed an explosion of technological marvels. The discoveries of Michael, Maxwell, and their contemporaries acted as the fulcrum upon which the balance of old and new tilted inexorably towards the future. As the first broadcast signals began to punctuate the airwaves, people gathered around radios, their ears attuned to the magic of disembodied voices that traveled invisible paths. The world was no longer a tapestry of distant, disparate threads, but a tightly woven fabric, pulsing with the electricity of shared experience. Yet as humanity marveled at the newfound power to connect, the natural world whispered its own truths. The electromagnetic spectrum, once a wild frontier, was now a domesticated landscape, but its depths were fathomless and untamed as ever. In this grand narrative of man versus nature, the final chapter was yet unwritten. The legacy of Michael's taming of the wild above was a beacon that would illuminate the path for generations to come, a path lined with the wonders and warnings of a world forever transformed by the power to connect. Chapter 6. A World Connected. The turn of the century heralded an age where the once boundless gaps between nations and people shrank beneath the weight of an electrified new world. In the bustling streets of London, the air thrummed with the vibration of progress, the cityscape a testament to the relentless march of innovation. At the heart of this transformation was the work of Michael, whose forays into electromagnetism had sown the seeds of a future where distance was rendered obsolete by the spark of electric current. As scientists and engineers across the globe stood on the shoulders of his monumental discoveries, society found itself at the cusp of a revolution in communication. Within the hallowed halls of the Royal Society, a gathering of the era's most illustrious minds convened, their discourse a symphony of ideas and implications. A prominent figure among them, Sir William Thomson, known widely as Lord Kelvin, addressed the assembly with the gravitas that his reputation commanded. The implications of Faraday's work are profound, Thomson declared, his voice a resonant baritone that filled the chamber. We stand on the brink of an era where information can traverse oceans and continents in the blink of an eye. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd, each member acutely aware of the historical significance of the moment. Yet amid the shared excitement, there was an undercurrent of trepidation. The eminent sociologist Elizabeth, who had advocated for the use of technology for the betterment of society, rose to speak. The world grows smaller with each passing day, Elizabeth began, her tone measured yet insistent. The potential to unite is matched by the potential to surveil, to control. We must tread this new path with caution, lest we sacrifice privacy at the altar of progress. The room fell silent, pondering the gravity of her words. The promise of a connected world was as alluring as it was daunting. The marvels of the telegraph, the phonograph, and soon the radio suggested a future where thoughts and voices could be transmitted as easily as the written word.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe now and visit our website StoryWave.ai to start creating your own generative audiobooks today. StoryWave is the only true on-demand entertainment portal.